Why did Jesus, the very God incarnate, pray to God the Father, not just once, but throughout his life on earth, from the quiet hills of Galilee to the heart-wrenching cry on the cross? This question isn't just a theological mystery. It reaches deep into the core of our hearts. There are nights when you feel lost, when your prayers seem like whispers in the wind. Could Jesus' story change the way you see prayer, God, and even your own life? Today, we're embarking on a journey through time, from eternity before the world was created, through the most painful moments in history, to the radiant throne in heaven. We'll uncover the secret behind Jesus' prayers, not a sign of weakness, but the key to understanding love, sacrifice, and eternal communion. If you're curious to find the answer, drop 888, I'm ready to pray, in the comments right now. Hit like and subscribe to join us in this story. This isn't just a Bible story, it's an invitation to find light in the darkest corners of your life. Get ready, because the answer might change how you live forever. To understand why Jesus prayed despite being God incarnate, we must travel back in time, beyond the limits of history, past the first stars twinkling in the sky, beyond even the concept of time itself. Before the world was created, before light was separated from darkness, there was an eternal reality, a presence without beginning or end. The Bible opens a window to this reality through the words of Saint John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. John 1:1-2. This Word, Jesus himself, was not a creation born within the flow of history, but the eternal one, co-equal with the Father, existing in unmeasurable glory. Picture a realm with no beginning, where there is no day or night, no changing seasons or ticking of time. In that realm, Jesus, the Word, not only existed, but lived in a profound relationship with the Father and the Holy Spirit. The Trinity is not three separate entities, nor a single being merged into one. Instead, they are one God in three persons, each fully possessing the divine nature, bound together in perfect communion, a relationship of love, obedience, and shared glory. The image the Bible paints is not of a silent God, sitting alone on a throne in solitude. Instead, it's a divine dance, a vibrant movement of love where the Father glorifies the Son responds in obedience, and the Spirit binds them in absolute harmony. Another verse, John 17:24, offers a deeper glimpse into this reality as Jesus prays, "Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am, the glory you have given me because you loved me before the creation of the world." This glory wasn't something Jesus received when he became human or rose from the dead. It was his from eternity, within his relationship with the Father. Jesus, therefore, is not a figure who appeared in history to meet a temporary need. He is the eternal Word, present before all things began, the one through whom all things were made, and without him nothing was made that has been made. John 1:3. Grasping this eternal nature is the key to answering why he prayed. His prayers were not acts of weakness or need, but an inseparable part of the eternal relationship between Father and Son, a relationship that existed before time itself. If Jesus is God, why did he need to pray? This question only feels puzzling if we view prayer as an act of inferiority, a plea from a lesser being to a higher power. But in the context of the Trinity, prayer is not a one-way act from a subordinate to a superior. It is the voice of an eternal relationship, an ongoing exchange between the Father and the Son, expressed through love, obedience, and mutual glorification. In eternity, before the world was created, there was a sacred dialogue between Father and Son, not in human words as we know them, but in a profound communion where each person of the Trinity lives to honor and love the other. When Jesus prayed on earth, he wasn't starting a new habit. He was bringing into this finite world a reality that existed from eternity. John 17:5 provides clear evidence. "And now, Father, glorify me in your presence with the glory I had with you before the world began." This prayer wasn't a request from someone needing to be granted something. It was a reaffirmation of the eternal relationship between Father and Son. Jesus didn't pray to persuade the Father or to seek something new. He prayed to continue living in communion, to reflect on earth the relationship that existed before time began. Think of it like a river that never stops flowing. In eternity, the Father and Son were always in a loving exchange, where the Father gives glory, the Son receives and reflects it, and the Spirit makes that exchange vibrant. When Jesus stepped into the world, he didn't cut off that river. Instead, he let it flow through his human body, through prayers in the dark of night, through moments of kneeling on the hills of Galilee. Prayer, therefore, wasn't an act of necessity, but a natural expression of this eternal relationship. John 11:41-42 reinforces this idea as Jesus prays before raising Lazarus. "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." This prayer wasn't a request for a miracle to be granted, but a public declaration of the relationship between Father and Son, so those watching could see that everything Jesus did flowed from his communion with the Father. Prayer, in this moment, was a window through which humanity could glimpse that eternal relationship. The relationship within the Trinity is not only about love, but also about voluntary obedience, a perfect harmony among the persons. The Father initiates, the Son responds, and the Spirit unites. This obedience isn't forced or imposed, but a loving choice, where each person finds joy in glorifying the other. The Bible gives us a clear view of this through Jesus' words in John 5:19. "Very truly, I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does." These words aren't an admission of limitation, but a declaration of perfect unity and obedience between Father and Son. Jesus' prayers were how he lived out this obedience, even before he became human. In eternity, the communion between Father and Son was a kind of sacred dialogue, where the Son always responded to the Father's will with obedience and love. When he entered the world, he continued to live this way, but now within the limits of a human body, bound by time and space. Prayer became the means by which he sustained this obedience, not because he lacked power, but because he chose to live in dependence on the Father's will. In John 8:29, Jesus says, "The one who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do what pleases him." These words show that prayer wasn't an isolated act, but part of an ongoing relationship where Jesus never acted independently of the Father. Even though he could have called legions of angels to save him, Matthew 26:53, he chose to pray, to remain in the Father's will, showing that voluntary obedience was at the core of his being. This obedience makes Jesus' prayers unique. They weren't the submission of a creature to a creator, but the harmony of two persons within the same divine nature. The image may be hard to grasp, but it's like a symphony, where each musician plays a distinct part, yet blends perfectly to create a flawless melody. Jesus prayed not to achieve something, but to keep living in that symphony, ensuring his relationship with the Father remained the center of every action and word. Jesus' prayers were not only the voice of the Trinitarian relationship, but also the bridge connecting eternity to earth. When he stepped into the world, taking on human flesh, he didn't abandon his divine nature. Hebrews 1:3 describes him as the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. Yet in his incarnation, he chose to live within human limitations, and prayer became the way he brought that eternal relationship into the finite world. Picture prayer as an invisible thread, linking heaven to earth. During the long nights in Galilee, when Jesus withdrew to desolate places to pray, he wasn't merely seeking comfort or guidance. He was living out the eternal relationship he shared with the Father before the world was created, reenacting that communion within a human body. Prayer, therefore, didn't diminish his divine nature. Rather, it revealed the truth that he is God, living in perfect unity with the Father. In John 12:28, when Jesus prayed, "Father, glorify your name," a voice from heaven responded, "I have glorified it and will glorify it again." This moment shows that Jesus' prayers were not just his words to the Father, but part of a sacred dialogue where Father and Son glorified each other. Prayer became a window through which humanity could see this relationship, a reminder that God is not distant but near, ready to engage with those who come to him. Jesus' prayers, therefore, were not mere religious acts. They were the expression of a greater reality, a relationship that existed before time began and continues through every moment of history. When he knelt to pray, he wasn't just asking, he was living, breathing in the presence of the Father, bringing heaven to earth. Through this, he invites us to see prayer not as a duty but as a privilege, a doorway to step into that eternal relationship. When God chose to enter the world, he didn't appear as a mighty king riding on the clouds, surrounded by dazzling glory, or accompanied by thunderous roars from heaven. Instead, he took a path that astonished both angels and humanity. A frail infant, born in a cold manger in Bethlehem, growing up amidst the dusty roads and sweat of Judea. The Bible describes this incarnation as a profound act of humility in Philippians 2:6-8, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. The incarnation was not God abandoning his divine nature, but choosing to embrace human frailty, stepping into a world full of pain, limitation, and vulnerability. In his human body, Jesus experienced every facet of humanity. He knew the gnawing hunger after 40 days without food in the wilderness, Matthew 4:2, the burning thirst while sitting by the well in Samaria, John 4:6-7, and the exhaustion of walking for hours under the scorching sun to teach the crowds. He didn't merely wear human flesh like an outer garment. He truly became human, with a body that could be wounded, a heart that could ache, and a soul that could feel the weight of the world. Yet he remained God, the one who sustains all things by his powerful word. Hebrews 1:3. The union of divinity and humanity in him is a mystery beyond our comprehension. But this very mystery illuminates why he prayed. In his human condition, prayer became the way Jesus maintained a vibrant connection with the Father. He could have used his divine power to overcome any limitation. He could have called 12 legions of angels to rescue him, Matthew 26:53, or performed miracles without consulting anyone. But he chose to kneel, lift his eyes to heaven, and speak with the Father. This wasn't because he lacked power, but because he wanted to live fully as a human, relying on the Father as an example for humanity. In the context of the incarnation, prayer was the thread linking him to the eternal source of strength, the way he kept his heart aligned with the Father's will, even when his body was weary, his mind tempted, or his heart burdened by the world's sorrows. The incarnation also brought a deeper dimension. Jesus didn't just experience physical needs, but also the complex emotions of humanity. He wept at Lazarus's tomb, John 11:35. Felt sorrow and anger at the hardness of people's hearts, Mark 3:5. and experienced loneliness when his disciples failed to grasp his mission. Mark 8:17-21. In those moments, prayer became the space where he poured out his emotions to the Father. From the joy of seeing people listen to his teachings to the pain of knowing the cross was near. Prayer wasn't just a means to fulfill the Father's will. It was a source of comfort, a place where he found strength to continue his redemptive mission in a broken world. He showed us that prayer isn't a sign of weakness, but the way humans, despite their limitations, can touch the infinite nature of God. During his 3 years of ministry on earth, Jesus didn't view prayer as a religious ritual to be performed or a tool to achieve a goal. To him, prayer was the breath of his soul, the way he kept his relationship with the Father alive amidst the chaos of earthly life. Luke 5:16 records, "But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." These moments weren't escapes or reactions to crises, but an intentional habit, like the air a person needs to live. After long days of healing the sick, teaching crowds, or facing skepticism from religious leaders, Jesus sought solitude to speak with the Father, realigning his heart and mission. Picture a sailor in a storm, pausing to check a compass and adjust course. For Jesus, prayer was that compass, the place where he found clarity and strength to press on. Mark 1:35 captures a vivid moment. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place, where he prayed. These moments often happened in the dark, before dawn, when the world was still asleep. He didn't wait for a perfect moment or a pressing reason to pray. Prayer was an inseparable part of his life, the way he ensured every action and word reflected the Father's will. Jesus' prayers weren't confined to quiet moments. He prayed even in the midst of crowds, like before the miracle of feeding the 5,000, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. John 6:11. This act of giving thanks wasn't just a ritual, but a public declaration of his connection with the Father, showing that all his power flowed from their communion. Similarly, when facing challenges from scribes and Pharisees, he often withdrew to pray, seeking wisdom and love to respond, rather than anger or pride. Prayer was also how he prepared for greater trials. Before facing temptation in the wilderness, Matthew 4:1-11, he spent time in solitude, readying his heart. Though the Bible doesn't explicitly say he prayed during those 40 days, his reliance on God's word and the Father's will shows that prayer was the foundation of his victory over the devil. Prayer, then, was not just his breath, but the heartbeat of his earthly life, keeping his soul anchored to the Father amidst a world of chaos and temptation. He teaches us that prayer isn't an occasional act, but a way of life, where every step and decision is guided by communion with God. Jesus' prayers weren't just a daily habit, they were the guiding light in pivotal moments when he faced decisions that would shape human history. One clear example is before choosing the 12 disciples who would become the foundation of the church. Luke 6:12-13 records, "One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated apostles." Selecting the disciples wasn't a random or impulsive decision. Jesus spent the entire night praying, seeking the Father's will to ensure his choices aligned with God's divine plan. This moment shows that prayer wasn't just communication, but a way to align his every action with the Father's will. He knew the hearts of men. He knew Judas would betray him, Peter would deny him, and others would stumble. John 2:25. Yet he prayed and chose according to the Father's will, showing that prayer isn't just about seeking answers, but fully surrendering to God's purpose. He didn't rely on his divine power to make decisions independently, but chose to depend on the Father through prayer, setting an example for how we should face life's big decisions. Prayer was also how he confronted greater challenges, like the temptations in the wilderness, Matthew 4, 1-11. When the devil tempted him to turn stones into bread or leap from the temple's pinnacle, he refused, relying instead on God's word and communion with the Father. Though the Bible doesn't explicitly say he prayed during those 40 days, his dependence on the Father's will suggests prayer was the bedrock of his triumph. Prayer was the light guiding him through defining moments, ensuring every step aligned with God's will, even when the path ahead was fraught with trials and suffering. The Incarnation didn't just bring Jesus physical limitations, but also the deep emotions of humanity, making him closer to us than ever. Hebrews 5:7 poignantly describes, "During the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with fervent cries and tears to the one who could save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverent submission." His prayers weren't a performance, but the raw expression of a soul in human flesh, bearing the weight of humanity's burdens. He felt exhaustion sitting by the well, John 4:6. Sorrow when people refused to believe him, Matthew 23:37. And pain knowing the cross was near. In those moments, prayer was how he faced human weakness without losing his divine nature. He could have used his power to overcome any limitation, but he chose to kneel and speak with the Father. In John 12:27-28, he voiced his inner struggle. "Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name." This prayer reveals the tension between human emotions and divine purpose, yet he chose to submit to the Father's will, even when the path was filled with suffering. Prayer was also how he carried the burdens of those around him to the Father. In John 17, often called the high priestly prayer, he prayed for his disciples. "Holy Father, protect them by the power of your name, the name you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. I am not praying for the world, but for those you have given me." John 17:11-15. Even knowing the cross was near, he took time to pray for those he loved, showing that prayer wasn't just about seeking strength for himself, but bringing others closer to the Father. He prayed for Peter, knowing he would deny him. "Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail." Luke 22:31-32. Prayer, therefore, was the source of strength for Jesus to live fully in his human condition. It wasn't a sign of weakness, but a way to transform that weakness into an opportunity to rely on the Father. Through prayer, he showed us that even in our human limitations, we can find infinite strength in God's presence. Prayer was the thread connecting him to the Father's eternal will, the light guiding him through his earthly days, and an invitation for us to follow the path he walked. When darkness fell over the Garden of Gethsemane, it wasn't just the sky that grew heavy. Jesus' soul seemed crushed under an indescribable weight of pain. In nights past, this garden had been a place of quiet refuge where he knelt to commune with the Father in peace. But that night was different. The air was thick, the ground felt heavier, and the silence carried an oppressive force that made even the one who was God incarnate feel his soul breaking. Luke 22:44 paints a haunting picture. "And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground." This was not a moment of weakness, but the pinnacle of the Incarnation, where God in human flesh faced the greatest pain a soul could endure. Matthew 26:38-39 captures his words to his disciples before praying, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Then, alone among the ancient olive trees, he fell to his knees and prayed to the Father, "Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." This prayer was not just a request, but a cry from the depths of his heart, where his humanity and divinity met. He knew the bitter cup of the cross awaited, its pain, humiliation, and the weight of humanity's sin. In his human form, he felt fear, loneliness, and the crushing pressure of his redemptive mission. Yet he did not flee. He prayed not to change his fate, but to surrender to the Father's will, seeking strength to walk the path set before him. The prayer in Gethsemane is a vivid portrait of the struggle between human desire and divine purpose. As a man, Jesus felt the terror of the cross, not just its physical agony, but the burden of bearing the sins of all humanity, something he, the sinless one, had never experienced. Yet as God, he knew this cup was the only path to salvation. His prayer, "Not my will, but yours be done," was not the surrender of a defeated soul, but the submission of a loving heart, ready to sacrifice everything for the Father's will. Luke 22:42-43 adds that an angel from heaven appeared to strengthen him, but it was prayer that kept him steadfast. He prayed not once but 3 times, returning to the same plea each time, showing his perseverance in suffering and absolute dependence on the Father. This moment reveals that prayer doesn't always bring immediate relief from pain. Sometimes it only brings the strength to face it. In Gethsemane, Jesus didn't receive a promise that the cross would be removed, but he found the peace to move forward. Prayer became the anchor that kept him from being swept away by the storm of anguish, the light guiding him through the darkness of that fateful night. Through this, he shows us that prayer, even in our darkest hours, is how we can touch the strength of God. If Gethsemane was where Jesus faced pain within his heart, the cross was where that pain erupted into a cry that pierced the heavens. Betrayed, arrested, unjustly tried, beaten and mocked, he was nailed to the cross, suspended between heaven and earth, with a crown of thorns piercing his head and nails driven through his hands and feet. Amid all this brutality, he still prayed. Luke 23:34 records his first words on the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." In the midst of excruciating pain, as blood flowed and breathing grew labored, his first response was not to curse his enemies, but to plead for their forgiveness. This prayer testifies to his unconditional love, a love that transcends all suffering and injustice. But the most agonizing moment was yet to come. Around noon, as the sky darkened, a heart-wrenching cry rose from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Matthew 27:46. Quoting Psalm 22:1, these words were not a wail of despair, but a cry from the depths of the incarnation. In that moment, Jesus experienced the separation that sin brings, not because he sinned, but because he bore the sins of all humanity. 2 Corinthians 5:21 explains, "God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." On the cross, he endured the separation humanity deserved, so we could be reconciled to God. The cry, "Why have you forsaken me?" is one of the most profound moments in human history. It wasn't doubt in the Father's love, but an identification with humanity's pain. Those times we feel abandoned, forgotten, or engulfed in darkness. Jesus, in his human form, endured that pain so we would never have to face it alone. Yet even in this darkest moment, he prayed. His cry was a prayer, a call to the Father, showing that even when the heavens seemed silent, he trusted in the Father's presence. Finally, before closing his eyes, he prayed once more. "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Luke 23:46. These were not the words of a defeated man, but of a victor, entrusting his life to the Father with absolute confidence. His prayers on the cross show that even in death, he remained in communion with the Father. The cross didn't silence his prayers. Instead, it transformed them into a song of triumph, opening the way to salvation for humanity. The story of Jesus' prayers doesn't end at the cross or the empty tomb. After his resurrection and ascension, he continues his role as the eternal intercessor, praying for humanity from the throne of heaven. Hebrews 7:25 declares, "He always lives to intercede for them, and therefore he is able to save completely those who come to God through him." He doesn't rest on his throne after completing his earthly mission. Instead, he continues his work, bringing humanity's prayers, pains, and needs before the Father. Picture Jesus, now in glory, with the scars of the nails still on his hands, standing before the Father's throne. Each time he intercedes, he doesn't just offer words, but carries the marks of the cross, eternal proof of his love and sacrifice. Romans 8:34 confirms, Christ Jesus, who died, more than that, who was raised to life, is at the right hand of God and is also interceding for us. His intercession isn't a distant act, but an expression of unrelenting love, a commitment that humanity will never be abandoned. This intercession carries profound meaning. Even when we are weak, fail, or feel lost, there is one praying for us. Hebrews 4:15-16 emphasizes, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence. He understands our pains, temptations, and fears, because he experienced them in human flesh. When he prays for us, he does so not as a distant judge, but as an elder brother, a compassionate redeemer, bearing the scars of the cross to plead for grace on our behalf. Jesus' intercession is a reminder that his prayers never cease. He prayed for Peter when he was about to deny him, Luke 22:32, for his disciples in John 17, and now he prays for each of us, even when we don't realize it. This intercession is an unquenchable source of hope, assuring us that even in our darkest moments, we are never alone. He is the bridge between heaven and earth, carrying our prayers to the Father and bringing the Father's grace to us. Jesus' prayers, from the lonely nights in Gethsemane to the piercing cry on the cross, are not just an example, but a profound invitation. He showed us that prayer is not a religious ritual, but the bridge leading us to God's presence. He prayed not because he lacked power, but because of love for the Father and love for humanity. Through prayer, he turned his most painful moments into triumphs, from Gethsemane to the cross, from the empty tomb to the throne of heaven. The question for us is this: if Jesus, God incarnate, prayed to be near the Father, what stops us from doing the same? Prayer is not a duty, but a privilege, an opportunity to enter the relationship he opened through his sacrifice. When he prayed on the cross, he tore the veil separating God and humanity, Matthew 27:51, opening a path for us to approach the Father with boldness. Today, you are invited to step onto that path. Start praying, not out of obligation, but out of love. Take time to speak with God, sharing your pains, hopes, and dreams before him. And as you do, remember there is one praying for you, Jesus, the eternal intercessor, standing before the Father's throne, bearing your name. If this story has touched your heart, comment 888, I choose to pray, to commit to a life of prayer. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest content. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, so they too can find hope in prayer. Prayer is not just words. It's the bridge leading you from darkness to eternal light. Take a moment to kneel, not out of duty, but out of love, and let your heart speak to the Father in heaven. We'll see you in the next story, where we'll continue exploring the mysteries of faith, the stories that light the path to God.